today. So bones, why do we need them? What do they do? Well, this is kind of a no duh. Without bones, we would just be a meat sack puddle. That's a lovely image for the morning. We would just be a meat sack puddle. The skeletal system works with the muscular system as kind of a ratchet. It allows something for the muscles to pull against, allowing for movement. But some other things it does, it protects. It provides a framework, and it protects a lot of our super important stuff, gives us shape. We got something super important right here. Do you guys have any idea how hard it is to fracture your skull?
Yes, I did it.
Me too. Fracture sisters.
I fractured my cheekbone when I was riding my bike one time, and I rammed into a brick wall, and I fractured my left cheekbone.
Oh my gosh. Okay, don't ride into walls. When you see a wall, you should probably stop. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it takes a massive amount of force to fracture your skull.
Probably ran into like a Wile E. Coyote drawing, you know?
Pretty much, yes. We also have framework here. Now, this is protecting our heart and our lungs. But don't I have a bunch of kind of important stuff right here? Why don't I have this protected with bone? Because honestly, once you get to your final rib, the only part of your this is kind of crazy. The only part of your skeletal system is this tiny, tiny little sliver of vertebra that is keeping you from just getting pulled in half. Why do I not have any bone protecting this? I mean, my God, I have my liver, my stomach, my intestines, my colon, my kidneys.
Because the diaphragm's really thick.
Well, the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle that is way up here. So let's critically think this through. This is actually crazy. If you follow your last rib down, so go to your last rib, and we know that it has a cartilage bridge because it's a false rib that comes up like this and joins the sternum right here at the xiphoid process. But if you go from that last rib and go straight across, your last rib is right about the height of your tummy button. Sorry, America, belly button. It's right at the height of your tummy button. But if that rib came straight across, so now I have all of this as rib cage, why does that not work?
We wouldn't be able to breathe.
Bend.
We, number one, couldn't move. Not so much that we couldn't breathe. I'm sure we could adapt to that. But oh no, what happens to me at Thanksgiving?
Oh no.
What happens to you when you have the baby? So now I have from my tummy button to my pubis. That's not enough. Yeah, this weird like shelf. Actually, that'd be really convenient. Like when you're eating your Thanksgiving Day meal and the shelf just gets bigger and bigger. Until
it's already a shelf.
Until you're just sitting there and now you are full, but you have a place to keep your plate to nosh for the rest of the day. Oh, I got a snort. Hallelujah, Groot. Got a snort. But no, mentally, isn't that just, this is crazy. Anyway. Now, a lot of, I know it's the mental image. Now, a lot of my abdominal organs are in fact protected by the skeletal system. Your kidneys are way, 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 way higher up than what you think. A lot of people are like, oh man, my kidneys hurt. No, no, no. They're up here, way up here, nestled underneath your rib cage. They're called retroperitoneal.
That's why I feel like it radiates from there all the way down.
Yeah, because ladies, guess where your ovaries are? Right at the height of your kidneys.
That's nice.
Which is why if you have, PMS, or some people have really, really bad radiating pain when the uterus starts to contract, and some people will feel it way up high
Yeah.
in their back. That's-
Sometimes you can confuse it like with a heart attack.
Yeah, if you have like endometriosis, you can confuse it with a heart attack because it's so high up. Your liver is way up here, nestled under your diaphragm. Your stomach is just to the left.
So that's like everything, all of that is really, irritated, all of it, just.
Yeah, in fact, your diaphragm is like this, and when you breathe in, it flattens out. When you breathe out, it comes back. So breathe.
So if you were having
Breathe.
stomach cramps and that was going on while you were having stomach cramps, that's just hard.
Well, yeah, because everything is radiating.
Oh.
But that's also why you might feel pain. You might feel pain one place, someone else feels pain in another place, because smooth muscle has no sensory or very little sensory. If there's something wrong and it needs to tell you, it has to give you pain. And what it ends up doing is sends a message to any surrounding tissue that does have sensory. And that's why some people, if they have kidney or uterine problems, feel it in their back. Some people feel it in their front. Some people feel it down here in their lower back. Some people will feel it in their legs. Some people get leg cramps. It's all different because the non-sensory organ is sending a message and saying, hey, somebody needs to, I can't contact brain. Somebody needs to contact brain for me because I have something wrong with me. And then one of you guys are like on it and you call, well, depending on who you are, that'll determine what you feel. So our skeletal system does protect a lot more than what we think. It provides leverage. It is attaching bones to bones via ligaments, and then muscles to bones, tendons. Very nice. Storage. Your bones are a wonderful storage unit for things like, well, we all know calcium because calcium builds strong bones. But it also stores stuff like phosphorus, magnesium, manganese, all of these other minerals, inorganic minerals that we'll talk all about in nutrition class. I specifically said calcium because number one, everyone knows calcium builds strong bones. But calcium does so much more than that. Calcium is one of the most diverse used minerals in your body. It builds strong bones, but it also helps you clot. It also serves as a neurotransmitter. It also allows your muscles to contract. So kind of. And then finally, our bones do produce some of our blood cells. Hemato, blood, poiesis, formation of. And so our bones form some of our white blood cell, the military cells, form some of our other different types of cells. And so without our bone forming these cells, cells don't live forever. And if I don't have a cell to replace one when it dies, suddenly now I'm deficient. So those are the primary functions of our bones. Have I given anyone any shocking information at this point? Okay. The way that bones are structured, I'm gonna have to go get mine. Oh, the bones are right there. Oh, nice, nice. Oh, you're fine. I can scoot right around. Oh, there's. So, in order for the bones to function the way they need to, we have two different bony configurations. The inside of the bones is like sponge toffee. And I can pass the scapula around because it's really got a nice, if you look at the edge right here where you can see the sponge toffee, you can see this, the sponginess. That's the cancellous bone. The outer part is the compact bone. Basically, this is a flat bone. This happens to be a scapula of a bovine. And it's like a compact bone sandwich. You have compact bone, and a nice cancellous bone in the middle. Why? Why do we have this configuration? Well, cancellous bone is made of bone kind of fibers. That's what gives it this sponge toffee look. And the cancellous bone can be disassembled and reassembled. Your bone tissue is constantly reforming. It's this spongy, fibrous tissue that allows that to happen. But the other reason why we have this light, spongy inner area is that it still provides the strength without adding the weight. If our entire bone was made of compact bone, the bones would be too heavy for our muscles to be able to move. Our muscles have a finite amount of strength, and the bones would be too heavy. So it's very easy to see here on this flat scapula. Here we have a bovine femur. I'm able to just kind of look at it and know that. You will too. My clues are it has the head and it has a groove. What do you think the groove is for? What do you think? Yeah, the patella. This is known as the patellar surface. So I know for a fact if I see the patellar surface,
Like the knee just seemed too obvious.
it has to be a femur. And I know that femur because the knee has to go forward and the hip has to fit. So if I have it like this, does that work? No. How about like this? No. So it has to be this leg. But here we have the same configuration. We still have cancellous. You can see here where it's broken off a little bit on the side of this patellar surface. You can still see the sponge toffee. And again, I can pass these around if you want to see them. We still have the cancellous bone, but now the whole outer diaphysis and epiphysis are compact bone, the outer part. So I think you probably went over cancellous and compact bone. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm not going to throw these. That's all I need is for somebody to end up with a concussion. So right here, and then you can, I'm going to show you and you can show the next person. So this is the sponge toffee. That's all of the cancellous bone. And then you can see the hard outer part, which is the compact bone. So right in here, this is all the compact bone. So it's kind of sponge toffee. And then you can see this hard outer, more solid.
So would the turbinates also be cancellous bone or?
The turbinates are kind of a bony structure unto themselves. They're more of what we call scroll shaped. What I'm referring to specifically are going to be your primary skeletal. Because also you have 3 fine bones in your inner ear. Well, they're kind of a bone configuration all their own. They're a little bit more, they're still part of the skeletal system, but they're an outside, not this kind of norm.
I have a question.
Sure.
So in med term, we were talking about bone a couple of chapters back, and Ms. Rivera had us watch some ed puzzles, and I remember him saying that osteons, he was talking about osteons. Is a Haversian canal just another word for an osteon?
An osteon? No.
Yeah, no? Okay.
So the Haversian canal, the Haversian system, we used this word in the last chapter. We have a couple of different specific openings in the bones. Because the compact bone is very dense, but we still need blood supply to be able to not only enter the bone.
Is that what the holes inside of the bone? Yeah, I think it's a hole with the holes. It's like a circle called an osteal, and inside the osteum are they.
So the Haversian canals, though, are located throughout the entire bone. Haversian canals provide an opening here, and then Volkmann canals run the length of the bone to allow for the blood to nourish the whole bone itself. I have some pictures coming up to show you. So here we've got a picture. This is a bone that has been bisected. You can see here at the epiphysis, we have the sponge toffee. There's all the cancellous. And you can actually see some of the little bone fibers. This outer part here is the compact bone. And you can see that we've started to see the void right here. I think somebody in here was asking about that. That's the intramedullary cavity. That would be where our marrow is found. That's the blood cell producing component. And it's just a big void filled with, if you've ever eaten marrow, it's delicious. Oh, marrow is amazing.
Miss Up, I don't know if you checked the chat, but my laptop died and I'm using my phone for Zoom and my camera is cracked, so that's why it's off.
Oh, that's fine. I don't have my chat up.
Okay.
So thank you for letting me know. All right, so we have some structure. We do have osteobone sites, cells. And in fact, we talked, I think, a little bit in more depth, where we also talked about osteoclast, osteoblast. Now, in this case, referring to our skeletal system, osteoclast is the cell that goes through and breaks down bone. Osteoblast goes through and reforms bone. I've got a little animation that I'm going to show you here. But overall, all bone cells are referred to osteocytes. Clast means, in this case, to break down bone. Blast means to build up bone. Blast. Build up. Why do we need to break down bone? That seems counterintuitive to me, does it not? Because bone cells don't live forever, just like skin cells. But unlike skin cells, where I can shed them, can I shed my dead bone cells? No. So I have these little hoovers that go through and break down old bone. And then I have these little builders that come through and build up new bone. It's really pretty amazing. And environmental changes can cause the reformation. I think we mentioned the other day about cowboys. Cowboys are sitting on a horse, so as their bones are breaking down and reforming, they are actually taking the shape of the horse, and that's why they have those bowed legs. That's how you tell a true cowboy. That was one of the things when I first moved to Texas, and all the little, this is way back when I was a child. I too was a fetus at one point. And all these little Texas boys like, I'm a cowboy, I'm a cowboy. And I was taught very early that you only know they're a real cowboy if they walk with that bowed leg. Because otherwise that cowboy wannabe, and they do not spend the time on a horse.
So one of my cats is kind of chunky, and he sits weird, like with his legs on his front legs on either side of his hind legs. He likes to sit like that, and he's starting to like become bow-legged.
Yep.
Like horrifying.
So there's also a reason, especially dogs, when they put their back feet out and put their front feet like this and they sit like this, that's not always just a super cute thing.
It's not cute.
Sometimes what they're actually doing is trying to take pressure off their lower back. Especially if you have like longer bodied dogs, it could be an indication of the beginnings of IBDD. Not common in cats.
Yeah, no, I mean. he's
But
just-
yeah, big fat cats, because again, that lumbar is
Get
not
like- he's not
supported
really
and it
sway back
starts to get swayed. And what's the first thing, we have problems because we're bipeds, but what do? The first thing we're gonna do, stretch it out this way. Well, that's what they're doing in their limited canine feline capacity. Periosteum, again, this is just med term. This is not shocking new information. Peri meaning around, osteum, bone. And then, so the periosteum is the membrane that lines the outside of the bone. Endosteum, inside the bone. And again, I've got some pictures to show you here.
The periosteum surrounds the compact bone. Is that correct?
It does. So let me demonstrate for you. Where did my femur go? Can I borrow my femur back for a minute, or the scapula? All right. I'm going to do a stop share so that I can see. All right. So what I've got here, there we go, is I have got a bone and I have got a periosteum. That's the periosteum. Now I have the outside of the periosteum and I have the inside of the periosteum. So on the notes, when it was saying the inside of the periosteum comes in contact with the bone cells, it does, but it's still a membrane that wraps around the outside. Does that visual help? Does that answer your question? I don't know who said that. Are we done with this? Did everyone get a chance to see it? So that's the periosteum. It surrounds the bone, but we do, just like any other sac or covering, we've got an inner part and an outer part. So here where it says the inner layer contains our osteoblasts, that's the inside of the bag that's got some osteoblasts that are now coming in contact with the bone, laying down bone as we need it. I do have a little animation that I'd like to show you about these osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Oh, I had it open on my other computer. All right. I have too much exercise happening in my life right now. This takes just a minute. I have so many videos on here.
The skeleton changes across the human lifespan. This is characterized predominantly by bone formation and growth throughout childhood, followed by a gradual loss of bone density that begins in early adulthood that can accelerate significantly in older adults. The density of bone is modulated by a group of cells including osteoclasts, which are multinucleated cells that resorb bone, and
CC at the bottom.
Yeah.
osteoblasts, which refill the resorption cavities created by osteoclasts. Osteoclasts anchor themselves to the surface of bone. This creates a microenvironment underneath the cell, which is referred to as the sealed zone. Within this zone, the osteoclasts create an acidic environment that dissolves the bone's mineral content. Once the mineral content of the bone has been dissolved, enzymes released from osteoclasts remove the remaining collagenous bone matrix to complete the process of resorption. Following resorption, osteoblasts move into the resorption space and start to produce and deposit organic matrix called osteoid. Osteoid, a substance made predominantly of collagen, forms a scaffold in which minerals including calcium and phosphate begin to crystallize. Some active osteoblasts become trapped within the matrix they secrete and thereby become osteocytes. Other osteoblasts will undergo apoptosis or will revert back to lining cells which cover the surface of bone. This cycle of bone resorption and formation is referred to as remodeling. There is also a process where bone formation by osteoblasts occur without prior bone resorption by osteoclasts. This results in an increase in bone mass and is referred to as bone modeling. Bone modeling promotes the growth of bones and is important for maintaining bone strength. Remodeling also plays an important role during bone growth by optimizing the growing structure. After the age of 30, most people experience a gradual loss in bone mass due to a relative decrease in the activity of osteoblasts compared with osteoclasts. However, there are many factors that impact the process of bone remodeling and influence the degree of bone loss we experience as we age. For example, medications such as glucocorticoids, which can promote osteoclast activity and also reduce bone formation. Proper nutrition and physical activity can help strengthen bone. It is also believed that osteocytes form a complex network in bone that can sense any increased workload on the bone and respond by triggering the differentiation and activity of osteoblasts to increase bone density. Conversely, when bone experiences reduced loading conditions, such as during long-term bed rest, resorption and remodeling increase to eliminate underloaded bone. Loss of bone mass reduces its strength and increases the risk of fracture. This highlights the importance of staying active, maintaining good nutrition throughout life, and being aware of personal risk factors associated with low bone density.
So that just kind of goes to show and now gives you sort of a mental image of what is happening when I'm specifically talking about bone remodeling, osteoclasts to break down, and then the little osteoblasts to build back up. I like that little video. It is linked to my website, so if you need to go back and rewatch it, you can anytime. Picture. Here we have a picture of a cross section. There's the membrane, the periosteum, compact bone. Here we have a great picture of what we're referring to as the Haversian canals. Haversian canals are these little construction openings that are specific for allowing blood, arterial, and nervous supply to enter the bone. Here I've got a few microscopically enlarged, so they're just tiny. You can't see these with your naked eye. These are microscopic. The holes that you're seeing that are outlined, those are not Haversian canals. So we have our haversian canals that enter the bone. And then they branch off at a 90-degree angle. So the haversians are what enter into the bone. These 90-degree angle are called Volkmann canals. The only difference between haversian and Volkmann is number one, they run at 90-degree angles. Haversians enter the bone. Volkmann runs the length of the bone. So the Volkmann canals take the blood that have entered by the haversian canals and deliver it throughout the length of the bone. These two canals are what form the communication throughout the entire bone. If you break a bone, this is a big problem. Depending on where you break the bone. If you break the bone and interrupt the blood supply by damaging the haversian and the Volkmann canals, what happens to tissue when it has no blood supply? Can your bones die? Yeah, parts of them sure can. And then they become very brittle and they break and they then cause oodles and oodles and oodles of problems. So it's these two, the Volkmann and the haversian entering the bone, Volkmann taking the blood and running it throughout the bone, that provides the nourishment, the oxygen, the carbon dioxide pickup. It's pretty cool. I think I have a slide coming up with the Volkmann canals. I got excited. So this is just going over, once again, the cells are osteoclasts, osteoblasts, osteocytes. And I just showed you the video. This is just I really love that video because it really does demonstrate in very easy to understand, well, I think easy to understand, I'm not going to assume, the process that bone is broken down and then reformed. And I find it really fascinating that it just knows. It's like, are your bones intelligent? I find that a fascinating question. How do they know you're on bed rest and start to eat away? How do they know that your bones are under additional strain and your osteoblasts are starting to produce more to thicken them up? How do they know? How do they know? I don't know. My bones are smarter than me. I don't know how it works.
Is it the calcium level?
I don't know if it's the calcium level, because if I have more strain on my bone does not necessarily mean I have an intake or deficiency of calcium. Or how does it know I'm on bed rest? I could be drinking nothing but milk on bed rest and my bones will still get weaker. I don't know. I think it's similar to your muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Have you ever seen Wall-E?
Of course, I've seen Wall-E. What a question is that?
They show the x-rays of the people as they're in space longer and their bones get smaller as they get bigger because they're no longer using them.
Because they're and that's a problem with the people on the International Space Station, which is why they have to do specific gravity related exercise. Otherwise they come back to Earth and just the gravity would crack and break all their bones. It's one of the big problems with deep space exploration. Is by the time you get anywhere, you're a meat puddle. All your bones have dissolved.
So if you were to stay in space forever, like just live there, would you really need bones?
Yes.
Can't move that.
To have any kind of movement, you need bones. So unless you want to just be an inanimate meat puddle, you still need bones to put on a spacesuit, to breathe. It is your chest cavity combined with the muscles that allow you to expand and contract your lungs. So yes, you would still need bones. Would you need them to support your weight? No, hence the fat floaty chair people. Would you need them to still do just rudimentary movement? Yes, yes, you would.
Quick question. Are Volkmann canals considered to be part of the Haversian system?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and I have a slide coming up in just a minute. I got super excited. You know me, guys. I get excited, I get ahead of myself. And now that we're actually into systems, oh my goodness gracious, there's going to be some point the toe moments.
Miss Huff, so what is the actual matrix made of? Is it made of the osteoblasts or is it made of the osteocytes?
Kind of all of the above. So the matrix is actually made, the scaffolding is made of collagen fibers. And then the osteoclasts and osteoblasts move around on this scaffolding of collagen, osteoid collagen. And that's when they break down or build up the bone on the scaffolding. So it's kind of all of the above. The bone itself is made of this collagenous fibrous scaffolding that then incorporates the osteocytes and the mineral matrix, mineral deposits into the matrix. Your bone is, I mean, we look at it and it doesn't look very impressive. It's kind of like petrified wood. But the bone, when it's a living thing, is one of the most dynamic, complicated structures known in your body. It's amazing. But the only time we ever get to see them, oh, here's a weird fact for you. Right now, all of your bones are wet. They're inside your body. No, they're just wet. Your bones are wet.
Everything's wet.
Everything inside of you is wet.
Is it real? Oh, Lord.
No, I put a kibosh on there right now. But the only time we get to see bones is when they're on the outside of the body. And they're dried and they're dead. And they become kind of fragile. This poor guy has lost a bit of the wing of his ilium right there. But the fact that he's lost the wing of the ilium, I think it was Sean, although I'm not sure. I'm learning voices. See if I can do this without breaking everything around me. So right there, you can see the matrix. You can physically see the collagen fibers that are making up the sponge toffee of this cancellous bone. Your osteoblasts are going to travel along that and lay down the harder surface. Your osteoclasts are going to move along it and vacuum it up. Embed into it. Go ahead, Sean.
So are the osteoblasts putting calcium inside of the fibers to make it strong, or are the osteoblasts becoming the calcium to make it hard?
No, and sort of. So the osteoblast is not laying down calcium. The osteoblast is laying down this specific structure called osteoid. Osteoid is bone-forming cement. Once it's laid down, then the body will start depositing calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and all of the other components to help with the integrity and strength. And then some of those blasts will also be incorporated and become osteocytes. So that's what I'm saying. It's incredibly complex. Although right now we've delved a little further than what we need to. All we really need to know is the definitions of the 3 different types of cells.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. It is pretty fascinating the way it works, though. We don't often think about our bones.
I have a question. So, like, in the case of like breaking down, how is flesh-eating like bacteria come into place with that?
So what you're now referring to is what kind of bacteria?
Flesh-eating bacteria?
Does that typically affect the bone? By definition, flesh. Now, if it gets into the bones, if you have any kind of bacteria or infection that gets into your bones, you're in big, big trouble because your bones have a major, major supply of blood throughout them. Well, where does blood go?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. So if you get an infection that gets into your bloodstream, where does it go? It affects everything and potentially causes multi-system organ failure. And then what happens? And then you die. So here we have, there's your definitions, my dearest. The Volkmann canals pass at right angles to the Haversian. And these two canals, I mean, if you think about it, didn't we just have a major news story involving a canal? Didn't we?
Oh,
And now Egypt is holding the boat hostage for $900 million to pay for everything.
Well, yeah, because the canal, shouldn't be their responsibility. That crazy. So yeah, anyway, so that's.
Should have insurance.
I full had a stress dream about canals, like Idaho canals. I dreamt that somebody tried to drive through one and the water went up over their car.
Oh, darling, you just need to get on Reddit and get onto the one of my all-time favorite subreddits is called Idiots in Cars.
Oh, yeah. But no, I watched these people, they managed to get out of the car, but you can't get out of canals. By definition, they're just like cement,
right,
walls. They're not easy to climb out of. And like, I was trying to like reach in and help them because it was about to go into an aqueduct.
Right?
And
Oh my
they're like, no,
goodness.
we have to write it out, call 911, I guess. And they wouldn't let me help them.
Oh my gosh, that is a stress. We need to get you some essential oils or something. But if we think about, what comes into our mind when we say the word canal, a canal is a specific small passageway from one specific area to another specific area. There's no detours. It's not like this boat can go over in this canal and this one can go up to another port. Same thing here. Think of when I'm saying Haversian Canal, Volkmann Canal, it is a small opening, a small communication to a specific destination. So that's what we're referring to. Whenever I say the word canal, either Haversian or Volkmann, the biggest difference for although if you were, an osteologist, you'd punch me in the face for saying this. But for what we need to know, the only difference between the two is one enters the bone, one runs at a 90-degree angle. The nutrient foramen, what do we know the word foramen to mean? An opening, a hole. These are larger blood vessels, not the tiny capillaries. These are much, much larger. And why do we need these much larger blood vessels? These are primarily to carry big nutrients. Calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium molecules are humongous compared to blood cells. And so whereas our blood cells are able to enter and exit through our Haversian and Volkmann canals, our minerals cannot. And so we need to have a bigger opening, and that's why it's called a nutrient foramen or foramina, because it's where the nutrients to help the bone are entered. Now, it is very important. There are some naturally occurring structures in the bone that can sometimes show up on a radiograph. And if you are not educated, although you all will be because you're in this school, If you don't know what you're looking for, sometimes these can appear as a fracture. So when you as a technician are taking radiographs and then you're assessing the radiographs and you're like, oh no, this dog's leg is broken. Okay, how are you going to either confirm or deny that that's even a possibility? Yeah, use your senses. If the dog came in, is he got a broken leg? No, of course he does not. A lot of being a technician really is just kind of connecting the dots with your own common sense. If you see a radiograph, and I think I have one coming up if I'm not mistaken. Yes. I'm gonna turn out this. I love radiology. And honestly, you guys, here's how much I love you guys, because I have the option to either continue A&P or do radiology. You don't apologize, it was my decision to make.
I'm so glad you stayed with us.
So I've decided to stay with you. All right, so here we have, this is a great radiograph, because you can see, all right, obviously this is the shaft of a long bone, right? Obviously. Shaft of the long bone is referred to as the diaphysis. We can see the white or whiter, the more dense a structure is. So the harder something is, the whiter it appears. The less dense something is, so the softer it is, the darker it appears. So I know that there's a big cavity right here, right? The medullary cavity. What is in the medullary cavity? Bone marrow. Is bone marrow super, super hard and dense? No, so it would show up darker. Compact bone though, super, super hard and super dense. So it shows up whiter. Now what we're seeing here where these arrows are pointing to, it's actually a dark line. This is a black line right here. It's hard for me to outline it. It's like the width of a hair, which is what some fractures do look like. That is, in fact, a nutrient foramina. And again, are you going to know that just by looking at a radiograph? No. We need to have a bit of history. We need to know the clinical signs. Why did this dog come in? If this dog came in non-weight bearing, then yes, this very well could be a hairline fracture. If this dog came in, acting a fool, then it's not a hairline fracture. It's probably not a hairline fracture. Most likely a nutrient foramina. When in a dog's life would you expect the nutrient foramina to be at its maximum diameter?
Younger, earlier.
Why?
Because they're still growing and producing more stuff and needing more nutrients. And
I give you unicorn high five. Younger animals are really going to have these very distinct on the radiograph because they are much larger. The growing bones need more nutrients, hence a larger nutrient foramina. Does that make sense to everybody? Love it. So we have two different ways that we can grow bone, and these two different ways are, one of them is for flat bone. There's scapula. Oh, can I have my scapula? Thank you. So one of these is for flat bones, and one of these ways is for long bones. Because the way that we grow and we form long bones is not the same way we can grow these sandwich bones. Right? Sandwich bones and round bones, two different kinds of bones, two different kinds of growth. Endochondral. Okay, let's use our medical terminology, you guys, and decipher this word. Endo. Inside. What is chondral? Yeah. So this is where we have new cartilage formation turning into bone. Intra in membranous, membrane. So membranous is going to be how we make more of our flat bone sandwich. Chondral, cartilage, I remember that because it's my long bones that have the primary amount of cartilage. Endocartilage is where we have these growth plates. I got pictures and stuff. You don't have to be furiously writing everything I'm saying right down. I have these growth plates, which is a void. It is not hard bone. And so my body can lay down more and more matrix, turn it into cartilage, and then convert it into bone, which will cause the overall length of the bone to grow. All of this is stimulated by growth hormone. Again, hooray, huzzah. The endocrine system is one of my favorite systems because a lot of it is super self-explanatory. If I say to you the words growth hormone, what would you assume that it does? It makes things grow. What? So this growth hormone is what tells your bones to continue laying down, and growing. Now, eventually, what do you think happens? It stops. You reached a height that your DNA blueprint said you were going to reach. And then your gland, the pituitary, said, all right, boys, we're as tall as we're going to get. So go ahead and close all those growth plates. We don't need them anymore. Go ahead, close those. And now we're going to really dial down that growth hormone. We're only going to give enough growth hormone to kind of keep everything in let's keep everything shiny new. Remolding, refolding, revamping. So it really dials down that growth hormone. There are some conditions though, and I'm just telling you this for interest. There are some conditions where maybe you'll have a pituitary tumor and the pituitary never, ever, ever tells your bones stop growing. What do you think happens? You never stop growing and you develop a condition called giganticism.
Andre the Giant had that, right?
But Andre the Giant actually was not technically medically a giant. He had, oh man, I just had it. He had a condition called something else. So true giantism is where the growth plates never close. And they're just growing longer. What Andre the Giant has, thank you.
Acromegaly. Acromegaly is what he said. And it's a form of gigantism.
Right. The difference being that eventually, so his bones obviously did grow longer than the average person. But then what happened was the growth plate closed, but his bones were never told to stop growing. Well, if my growth plate closes, can I grow long? No. So they grow wide. And that's why he had the very prominent forehead, the very thick jaw, because although his bones had stopped growing in size, they never stopped growing in density. And that's eventually what killed him. But his metabolism was also affected by it. Not only his size, but his metabolism. There was a funny story back in the, although you're all fetuses, you don't remember the heyday of the World Wrestling Federation. Back in the 80s, that was all the rage. The rager was WWF, Hulk Hogan. Oh yeah. All of them, you had the British Bulldogs, you had Matilda, you had Jake the Snake Roberts, Andre the Giant.
Another thing says that he had Sotos-Dodge syndrome, which is not related to a pituitary.
No, that is not. That had nothing to do with his growth issue. Well, thank you for looking that up. So the other thing, because his metabolism was so in overdrive, because his body was constantly thinking, I am a teenager in a growth spurt. Any of you that have teenagers at home, what's your grocery bill like? They're eating you out of house and home because they need the energy
My son is 6'5".
simply to grow. My nephew is almost 6'6" and weighs over 300 pounds of solid muscle. The child is 19 years old.
My 18-year-old's a gamer, so he's solid.
So he's, but they need the nutrients. But Andre the Giant's body never turned off and said, hey, you're not a teenager anymore. So he was taking in the nutrients and using them as fast as he could take them in. The man could drink like 60 beers in one go without even feeling a buzz. Although he did test it. And in fact, when he would go to New York City, they had to have an entire crowd of police around him, not for crowd control, but if he passed out and fell over, they didn't want somebody to get hurt. No, I'm being serious. This is not a Miss Huff stupid story. Read up on this. This is true and real. So tomorrow, time flies when we're having fun.
Documentary on HBO about Andre the Giant.
Oh, he was a fat